Have you ever wondered what happens to a civilization when its women no longer desire to create life? We were told that progress would bring freedom, that liberation from old roles would lead to happiness. But what if, hidden behind this march toward independence, lies a truth we're too afraid to face? A truth that whispers through empty nurseries and silent playgrounds. What if the future has no mothers? Schopenhauer warned us long before the birth rates collapsed. He believed that when women turn away from their most sacred instinct, motherhood, society itself begins to rot at the core. A woman who denies the call to creation, he argued, also denies the continuation of humanity. And yet, from the other side of this battlefield, Simone de Beauvoir stands tall, asking a dangerous question of her own. Was motherhood ever a noble instinct, or just a role forced upon women by a fearful world of men? Look around. The numbers do not lie. Child-free movements rise with every generation. Birth rates fall below survival thresholds. And for the first time in history, entire cultures are facing the question, what if women simply choose not to choose motherhood? Welcome to Thinking War. From the dawn of civilization, one truth seemed unquestionable. To be a woman was to be a mother. Her worth measured not by the brilliance of her mind or the strength of her will, but by the life she brought into the world. Motherhood was painted as the highest form of feminine virtue. Statues were erected. Songs were written. Entire religions bowed before the image of the mother. And yet, beneath the golden glow of this so-called sacred duty, a question lay buried for centuries, a question few dared to ask. Was this role ever truly a choice, or simply the most beautiful cage ever built? Today, as the child-free movement grows and women boldly declare their lives complete without children, this ancient narrative begins to crumble. Is this a betrayal of nature, or the first taste of real freedom? Schopenhauer would argue that this is the beginning of the end. To him, the womb is not just a biological function, it is the foundation stone of society. Without women embracing motherhood, there is no future to build, no legacy to defend, no purpose for the sacrifices of men. But Simone de Beauvoir stands in fierce defiance. She asks, if motherhood is truly sacred, why must it be demanded rather than chosen? She sees the glorification of motherhood as nothing more than a veil hiding centuries of oppression. To her, the true evolution of humanity begins the moment a woman can stand tall and say, I am complete, with or without a child. And so the battlefield is drawn. Is motherhood a divine calling, or a cultural shackle forged by those too afraid to imagine a different future? Today, the womb itself becomes the center of the fiercest ideological battle of our time. To Schopenhauer, the rejection of motherhood was not a simple lifestyle choice. It was a declaration of war against the natural order. He saw motherhood not as an optional chapter in a woman's life, but as the very essence of her being. In his eyes, when a woman turns away from the role of mother, she turns away from the very purpose for which nature designed her. A woman who refuses to bear life, he wrote, refuses to participate in life itself. Schopenhauer believed that every civilization stands on two pillars, masculine sacrifice and feminine creation. Men build, protect, and conquer. Women, through motherhood, ensure that these sacrifices are not in vain. Without children, what remains of a man's struggle? What is the point of building a future if no generation will inherit it? He would point to the modern world and see nothing but evidence of his greatest fears fulfilled. Birth rates falling below survival thresholds. Nations facing demographic collapse. Entire cultures aging into oblivion while the youth disappear into the fantasies of freedom and choice. And yet, amidst this collapse, we celebrate the child-free lifestyle as if it were a higher form of enlightenment. Schopenhauer would call this what it truly is, civilizational suicide, disguised as progress. He believed that when motherhood is no longer sacred, nothing remains sacred. Without the womb, there is no continuity, no legacy, no reason for the sacrifices that built our history. He would ask, with the cold certainty of a philosopher who had already seen the end, if the womb is abandoned, who will carry the future? If no one chooses to give life, how long before life chooses to leave us behind? For Schopenhauer, this is not merely a question of personal freedom. It is a question of survival, and the answer will determine whether humanity thrives or fades quietly into extinction. Simone de Beauvoir stood against the towering myth of motherhood like a soldier against a fortress. To her, motherhood had never been a sacred destiny. It was a social contract written without a woman's consent. She asked the most dangerous question a woman could ask in any age. Do I want to be a mother, or have I simply been told that I must? Beauvoir believed that society glorified motherhood not to honor women, but to control them. The image of the good mother was a golden chain, forged to keep women tethered to homes, kitchens, and cradles, far from the realms of power, creation, and self-actualization. She argued that the so-called maternal instinct wasn't an unshakable biological truth. It was a narrative, repeated endlessly, until women mistook it for their own desire. A convenient myth to ensure that women sacrificed their ambitions before they could even dream them. Beauvoir did not reject motherhood outright. She rejected the compulsory worship of it. She believed that only when a woman could stand free, unshackled by fear, untouched by expectation, and still choose motherhood, could that choice have any real meaning. In her eyes, a mother born of freedom would raise children differently. Not out of duty, not out of resignation, but from a place of authentic, conscious love. And that, she argued, was the only kind of motherhood worth preserving. So she turned to the modern world and asked, "Are you becoming a mother because you choose to, or because you fear what happens if you don't?" For Beauvoir, the future does not depend on more mothers. It depends on free mothers, women who choose creation from a place of true power, not silent submission. And that, she declared, is where real civilization begins. Here, the battlefield sharpens, not with swords or shields, but with the sharpest weapon of all, ideas. On one side stands Schopenhauer, his voice a cold echo from a collapsing world. He points to the falling birth rates, the crumbling family structures, the empty playgrounds and silent nurseries. He asks, not with malice but with terrifying clarity, who will carry the future if women refuse to create it? To him, every woman who turns away from motherhood hastens the death of civilization. Without new life, without sacrifice, without the sacred duty of creation, what remains? A society of comfort-addicted individuals, chasing freedom while standing knee-deep in existential despair. But opposite him, Simone de Beauvoir stands unwavering. She looks upon the same barren landscapes and sees not the ashes of a dying world, but the fertile ground for something new. She asks, is a future worth living if it demands that women sacrifice their freedom to build it? She believes that motherhood without choice is nothing more than enslavement wrapped in silk, that a woman's womb is not the property of civilization, and that the first act of real creation is for a woman to create her own life, before she ever creates another. And so the war rages on. Schopenhauer mourns the death of duty, calling it the final collapse before oblivion. Beauvoir celebrates the rise of true autonomy, declaring that a new world cannot be born from the chains of the old. The final question burns hotter than any flame. Is this the extinction of humanity, or its painful evolution toward something higher? Are we witnessing the end of motherhood, or its rebirth as a conscious, powerful choice? The future does not wait. It demands an answer. And in the thinking war, neutrality is just another word for surrender. Choose. Defend. And above all, dare to question everything you've ever believed about life, love, and creation. Look around you. The battlefield is no longer theoretical. It's written in the very fabric of our modern world. Birth rates have plummeted to historic lows. Entire nations are aging beyond recovery. Governments offer financial incentives, desperate campaigns, even tax breaks, and still, women are saying no. Welcome to the age of childless by choice. An era where freedom is measured not by what a woman creates, but by what she refuses to create. Schopenhauer's worst fears have materialized. The streets of great cities grow quieter. The future population charts point downward in freefall. He would stand in front of these cold, irrefutable numbers and proclaim, "This is the slow suicide of a civilization too proud to beg for its own survival." But Beauvoir would step forward and see a very different landscape. To her, this is not a funeral. It is a revolution. She would say, for the first time in history, women are defining their own value, and it is not tied to the womb. The modern woman is no longer chained by expectation. She owns property, leads corporations, shapes political movements, and for the first time, she has the undeniable power to say, "I am complete, with or without motherhood." Yet beneath the triumph of freedom, a shadow lingers. Loneliness statistics are at an all-time high. Rates of depression and existential anxiety surge among childless adults. And in the silent hours of the night, a question echoes louder than any political slogan. Has freedom brought fulfillment, or just more sophisticated forms of emptiness? The world stands at a crossroads. Will this be remembered as the age when humanity chose enlightenment or extinction? In the thinking war, we do not answer that question for you. We ask it louder and force you to confront it. Is this evolution or quiet erasure? Are we building a future or turning away from it forever? This isn't a philosophical exercise. It's the choice every society, every culture, and every individual must now face. The womb may be empty, but the battlefield has never been more crowded.